Hello?
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi.
It's Bardish Chagger calling. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. You wanted a phone call in regards to Bill C-10.
Yeah, that's correct.
How can I be of assistance?
So yeah, I come from a social work background. I'm graduating this year in my bachelor's of social work program. And I've just noticed like the need for marginalized voices and people of minority groups to have like the opportunity to express their concerns with government policies and how they impact them. Because I work primarily with like refugees, and people like who are not born in Canada. And I'm just concerned that Bill C-10 will censor them, and if they're critiquing a government policy. As someone in social work, I value the voices of people who aren't normally given platforms to voice their concerns, and I just think that Bill C-10 will make that harder for marginalized people to express what's going on in the government and certain policies, and I'm just very concerned with Bill C-10.
Can I understand what part of the legislation you're referring to?
It's I think it's like giving the CRTC the governing power to um regulate certain like social media, like bigger social media platforms, and also just like the internet in general, like that kind of part of it.
Have you read the legislation, or is this based on newsletters or feeds that you're on?
Yeah, so I've read the legislation. I don't remember the exact part of it.
I would
But yeah.
welcome. I would welcome that you refer to the legislation and send it to me,
Okay.
because the legislation's been scrutinized at um, committee. This legislation, as much as and that's why I can kind of hear some of the commentary and actually refer to um, newsletters or feeds that are out there. But this has nothing to do with individuals. It has everything to do with broadcasting. So if
Mm-hmm.
somebody has the audience, which is really hard to do to get that audience,
Yeah.
I'm an elected official. I am in the public forum, and I don't have that audience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard to go viral and get that audience. But for anybody who is able to get that platform, this legislation is about protecting Canadian content and making sure it's an option. Because oftentimes people don't know about Canadian content, and when you are on these feeds, they are not even offering you Canadian content. And that's what it's actually not about individuals at all. It's about broadcasting.
Yeah.
The CRTC does not hold individuals to account; it holds broadcasters to account. So I would love to actually interact or meet some of the refugees or immigrant communities you're working with that actually have made it to this level, because I actually, as the Minister of Diversity, Inclusion and Youth, would love to bring them to the forefront.
Yeah. I mean,
Because
yeah, for
so
sure.
I'm not really seeing the connection. So if there is something within the legislation itself that you're reading, please send that to me, and I will
Yeah.
send it directly to the minister. But I've gone through the legislation, and I'm not sure what you're referring to.
I'm just like the definition of broadcaster. Like what is the definition of broadcaster in this bill? Because I have like read through it. Not recently, but I've read through it.
And I've never heard somebody question the definition of broadcaster. So up until C-10, we've not held social media to account. So we know about television, we know about radio, we know about newspapers,
Mm-hmm.
but social media has not been held to account. So people are not paying for Canadian content.
Yeah.
And either you think Canadians should be paid for their content or you don't. It's really quite simple. And our government is saying Canadian content matters and we have to protect our Canadian artists. And that's where everyone supports this legislation except for one party.
Mm-hmm.
And that one party is actually not sharing what the legislation is about. And the government actually wanted it to go to committee mostly so that we got it right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that we thought we came out with the silver bullet and it was going to be perfect. People have not been holding social media to account. But the block is on side from the get go, and if anything is joined us in time allocation, the NDP was willing to partner with us on time allocation, and they don't even support time allocation.
Yeah.
So I think that's where there's a little bit of a disconnect as to what the legislation is actually about and what it's supposed to do, and what the narrative is out there, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, because I've read the bill and I'm trying to look at this section particularly, but yeah, I think like I'm just concerned of just like more government control on what is being posted on the internet. Yeah, because like
there's going to be a bill that comes out to do with that. Yes, we are going to be going after online hate. It does not belong in our country.
Yep, I agree.
The government does have a role to play, but you're right. There is freedom of speech, but there's an issue when we start infringing upon someone else's rights and freedoms as well.
Yeah. So I was just wondering, like, I know, like, we already have like hate, like, we already like have hate speech like illegal in Canada, and it is like, it does reference the internet as well, but like, I keep hearing
the word. It doesn't reference the internet.
But like,
it doesn't.
But if someone like, for instance, utters like a death threat online, that can be held liable in the courts.
Yes and no. I would encourage, you know what, and it's awesome that you're in social work because we need more social workers, because you're fighting for the people who don't actually have their voices heard. But that's not exactly how it goes. Yes, in our country, we're starting to press more charges, but how many have been convicted?
Yeah, I don't know the number of how many have been actually convicted, but I know they can be charged. Yeah.
Not many. So even here in the Waterloo region, we just heard about somebody putting up posters that were quite inflammatory, very racist, do not belong in our community. The police did not charge them because the Crown attorney here, whatever, in Ontario said, well, we're not going to be convicting them, which means the police did not have permission to charge them even.
Okay, so what?
That means our laws don't go far enough, right? Like,
yeah.
And I think this is the conversation we're having as a country. And either we want to have it and do something about it, or we want to say, hey, we have a great country, and we, at any cost, should be protecting people's freedom of speech, which means you can run over people on this side of a road for going for a walk because they're dressed in their religious attire.
Yeah. I just don't see how that's connected to freedom of speech, like that like horrible like murder.
Well, I think that's a good conversation to have with some of the people you're serving, and you should really talk to them about it.
Yeah. So like, hate speech then. So what is the exact definition of that? Because I think there's just like a lot of like, I don't think like it's like totally like it's very gray, I find. Like when in politics, because I've listened to like the House of Commons and just like different debates on it, and I hear like hate speech and offensive speech. So I'm wondering, like, is that the same thing like in House of Commons, or are those two separate things?
So legislation is open to interpretation by legal experts, lawyers, and so forth. And that's why we have a judicial system.
Yep.
I'm not here to pretend to be an expert of it all. You wanted to speak about C10, I can tell you C10 has nothing to do with individuals.
Okay.
Like, that's how simple it is. And if you can find something in that legislation that tells me otherwise, I have no problem holding anybody to account. But I've combed through it many a time, so, but I welcome your eyes.
Yeah,
maybe
for sure.
Maybe something that I don't see, but it's not in there.
I'll have a look over it again.
Yeah. Send it to me for sure.
I also was wondering just currently about like as a feminist and as someone who values like women's safety and women's rights, like I've noticed in the expert panel that the Liberal government hired that they told them to scrap the hotel quarantine facilities. So I was wondering, and especially with like the alleged sexual assaults, like why, like is there anything happening to ensure that women are safe in those facilities? And like, why aren't those quarantine facilities being scrapped when the expert panel has told them to be scrapped?
Because as there's an expert panel that's saying this should be scrapped, there's also others, because we are a confederation and there are jurisdictions.
Yeah.
And so if the problem, and that's where when Premier Ford had said, we want to close the borders, Prime Minister Trudeau said, tell us who you don't want coming in. Because if you want to stop international students, we'll stop them. You want to stop essential workers, we'll stop them. Who do you want to stop? We'll stop them.
Yeah.
We don't have full discretion.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the only way to find a way to make sure that the virus is not spreading within our communities, because it's done a pretty good job at doing it.
Yeah.
Was to actually have some mechanism to keep it limited. The difference between an airport and a border is, from a border person can come straight home.
Yeah.
If they choose not to, well, people make decisions all the time.
Mm-hmm.
From an airport, when you get off a plane, you can't go straight home because you have to go through the security checks. You have to go get your luggage. You have to do all these different things. You don't have a direct path.
Yep.
So therefore, the same experts that today are saying, this isn't the solution, we're saying we needed something and this could be something to work with. And so we've not dealt with a pandemic before, but we want to try to do whatever we can. There'll never be, and it's really unfortunate, because there'll never be anything that's foolproof.
Yeah.
But we also have to look at, it's people doing it to people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, the government shouldn't have to tell somebody, well, you don't go and rape somebody, or you don't go,
yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, at some point, is it really just government?
For sure. I think I'm just concerned because like it doesn't like I've researched this a lot, and like I've watched like the House of Commons debate this, and it just doesn't seem like there's any data to suggest that the hotels are needed, because like I didn't see any data saying that there wasn't much like quarantine, or sorry, like the 14-day quarantine like adherence like without the hotels. So I'm just wondering, why is that necessary, especially when women are being like allegedly sexually assaulted?
So it was actually more so to make sure that the Delta virus didn't spread the way it has started spreading.
Mm-hmm.
So as people have stopped coming through the airports, now landing, it matters where you're coming from, landing in the U.S. and driving across.
Yeah.
Well, look at the numbers. The communities are seeing the Delta variant spread.
Mm-hmm. But is there any like direct data just like suggesting that it's because people aren't adhering to the 14-day quarantine?
So the hotel is not a 14-day quarantine. The hotel is up to 3 days.
Yeah, but like the 14-day quarantine when you get back like through a land border or an airport.
Is there data to prove it?
Yeah, is there there data to prove that people who like for people who are either even before like the hotel quarantine facilities, is there any data to prove that that they were necessary because like people weren't adhering to the 14-day quarantine that was originally implemented by the government?
That's why it came out, was because they couldn't limit the spread in community. So then they said to government, you need to do something.
Yeah.
And then the federal government said to provinces, well, first, we didn't go straight to the hotel quarantines. We limited international travel to 4 international airports.
Yeah. But like, was there data, though?
Okay, first of all, we've been saying since March 2020, don't travel.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. People still want to travel.
Yep.
Okay. And then we limited countries that you could travel from and so forth based on what was taking place there. And then we limited airports you could land at.
Yep.
And then we can only try to put in measures based on what's taking place.
Yeah.
We're not saying we've gotten it perfect, but when provinces and territories are saying you need to do something, we're asking them what they want to see done.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And we're working with them to get there.
For sure.
And we are using experts and academics and public health officials and so forth to say, what are our options?
But is there any data like out there? I'm just wondering, like, to suggest that people weren't adhering to the 14-day quarantine, like at home.
Yeah, there is data to prove it, but it doesn't necessarily. So if you go to the Canada.ca Canada.ca/coronavirus website, a lot of that information will be there. The challenge becomes, Rebecca, is that we're a confederation, so
Yeah.
regions don't necessarily have to give that information to regions do have to give it to provinces. Provinces don't have to give it to the federal government.
Yep.
There is no consistency as to the way data is being collected.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're massaging data, cool, but if one region is collecting it in a different way than another, are we really comparing accurate data? And it's also then open to interpretation.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm just concerned because like the alleged sexual assaults like going on, and like as a woman and as a feminist, like I think it's important to like be protecting women, and like these hotels have had multiple like outbreaks and like have had multiple alleged sexual assaults happening in them, and like blocks have been removed. And I think I'm just like why I'm raising this up is because like I'm just really concerned for women's safety.
And I can promise you that I don't know an individual that isn't.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I'm not necessarily not. You know what? You get to make that comment, and my job is to hear it, and I will take it down, and I take it seriously. And I'm not sure that we would ever want. I don't know who would want that on somebody else.
Oh, exactly.
But mind you, there's people who kill people all the time.
Yeah.
So I can't speak for all of humankind, but I can tell you that I can't imagine an elected official of any stripe or anybody who puts on their name on a ballot who would want harm in their community. But then again, we do see elected officials who don't think we need to be quarantining and so forth. But we also see that the virus is still present. And as the light at the end of the tunnel gets brighter and restrictions are loosening, we've also seen them have to be really tightened again.
Yeah.
So at some point, I'm not really sure what you would like to hear me say. So you don't support the hotel quarantines? Is that what you want me to note of this?
I think yes, but also wondering like what is being done to ensure that the women who are in those facilities are how are they being protected? Because if the government's subjecting them to this like 3-day quarantine in the hotel, like it's their responsibility to protect the women in those hotels.
Okay, so first of all, the government is saying don't travel.
Yeah.
If you're choosing to travel still, we are saying to protect communities, we need to quarantine and have testing done to ensure that you're not carrying the virus.
Yeah.
That's a point of up to 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to come home and quarantine for 14 days, and they send you home with a test that you used to have to do on day 10, now you do on day 8.
Yeah.
So I just think there's a lot of steps into that, because the first point is not to travel.
But like if they have to travel for work because they need a job.
And there is some of that people, but most of the people who have to travel for work and are deemed essential and have a very valid to travel, they're not in these hotels.
Yep. No, I agree with that. I'm just saying for for women who do choose to travel.
Like, the people who are supposed to be traveling and so forth, these additional measures are not impacting them.
Yeah.
These additional measures are impacting people who are choosing to travel. But either way, you're totally right, though. They should not be sexually harassed, or like none of that should happen. It's not appropriate, and it's not okay. We do not condone this behavior. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, there has been measures put to place. Yes, there has been investigations. I'm not really sure what's come out of them. For me, it's, I represent the people of Waterloo. Yeah. And for the most part, our community's done a really good job at not traveling. Yeah. Our community's done a really good job at adhering to public health guidelines. But yet, we are one of the hot spots in the province right now. Mm-hmm.
For sure. I think I'm just, like, concerned. Like, I firmly believe, like, even if, like, as much as I agree, like, yeah, like, people shouldn't travel, even if the women decide not to travel, they still deserve to be protected from sexual assault.
Oh, always. Agreed. Yeah. I don't even need to debate that with you. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, like, what is the government doing to ensure that those women are protected in those facilities?
I'm not sure what you want to hear me say.
Well, I just want to know what the government's doing to protecting the women in the facilities, because we both agree, like, they deserve to be protected from sexual or harassment and sexual assault.
The predators should not be in those facilities. They should not be working. Like, people should be looking at who they have working for them.
Yeah, yeah. So is the
So
government like going through like like police checks to ensure that those
we don't get to
employees?
hire for the hotel, Rebecca.
But if they're government if they're government
They're,
like
they're,
facil.
they're government approved facilities.
Mhm.
And so therefore the person who we are working with, the enterprise or business or whatever else, they have certain obligations that they need to satisfy.
Mhm.
Otherwise, people are able to hold them liable
And is one
if
of
they
those
would.
like obligations having a criminal like police background check?
How they hire would not be under federal jurisdiction; it would be under provincial jurisdiction. That's where our labor laws fall in the country.
Yeah. I'm just concerned that like if the government's allowing these hotels to like or is using these hotels for a federal quarantine that and then there's no
You do know these
investigation on it.
hotels were not put up because of the pandemic.
Yeah, no, I know they
You
were
know
already
these
pre-existing.
hotels,
Yeah.
if they have these behaviors, also had them outside of a pandemic, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is a greater problem that we have in our country.
Mhm. But I'm just wondering why the government would not investigate these hotels to ensure that like women would be safe from sexual assault and harassment before allowing them to be government approved
I will pass that
facilities.
forward, but rest assured due diligence was done.
Okay.
Nobody would intentionally put them, and I mean any level of government,
Yeah.
would never intentionally put its citizens in harm's way.
Mhm.
But bad things happen
Yeah, for
in our
sure.
country. Hence why we need social workers, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what to say. Like, you can't legislate people to treat people better.
Oh,
And I think
I'm
that's
fully
the
aware of that.
conversation our country is having right now.
Yeah.
Not just because they're women, not just because of their sexual orientation, not just because of the color of their skin, not just because they were here before Confederate. Like, we really need to be having this conversation. And what
Yeah.
are we doing about it? Right? Like, I
Mhm.
think that's a conversation that the federal government actually has been instigating for over 5 years now.
Yeah.
And most have considered it virtue signaling.
Mhm.
So I take your comments to heart. I appreciate them. And I welcome any tangible solutions or suggestions as to what you think would be, delivering better outcomes for our citizens, and the diversity and intersectionalities that we encompass. I welcome any feedback and suggestions.
Yeah, I think like a suggestion, like as someone who's studying social work and who is like looking at like is like focusing more on like solutions and policy, like I think like ensuring that those hotels like have police checks. And I understand it's a provincial thing, but then if the federal government is mandating these like quarantines, like women need to be assured that they're not going to be sexually assaulted, and the federal government has to do diligence and spare no effort in ensuring that women are safe. So I think like ensuring that there are police criminal background checks to ensure that, like to like minimize the risk of women being sexually assaulted or harassed. And right, also regular checks to see what's going on like in these hotels as well, like whether it's like lack of food or because I've also seen reports of that. But I think the thing that concerns me the most is the sexual assaults and harassment.
I have written down your concerns.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I was also just wondering, like, I know Justin Trudeau is also at the G7 summit with a bunch of other like G7 world leaders, and I was just wondering why he also isn't going to these same facilities. I know he's at he found.
He is going to be in a government approved hotel. The entire delegation that's gone, including the media and so forth, will be coming back and will be in the. They follow the same rules.
But they're gonna be at different ones that are only open for government workers. They're not going to the ones that regular people are going to. Like it's an Ottawa like hotel, and there's no quarantine facilities in Ottawa.
That's because the prime minister travels on government aircraft and it only lands in Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it is.
Okay.
But they're following the same rules, and the entire delegation is going to be following the same rules. When they get their negative test, they'll be able to go to their own place of residence and then quarantine for 14 days. But the entire delegation will be following the same rules.
So will they also be given like the same treatment and security and safe and yeah, like will they be
So I
treated
just
the
want you to
same?
know, Rebecca, as much as I do recognize that there has been horrible incidences, there's been like thousands of people who have gone through these facilities.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm
And
not
certain
denying that.
individuals that are being held to account have done bad things.
Yeah.
But that has not been I have constituents who live in Waterloo that have told me about their experiences in these hotels.
Mm-hmm.
I have not had a single person tell me that they've been raped or assaulted, or they've not received as much food as they would if they had access to just calling in room service.
Yeah.
But they did receive their meals. They did receive snacks. Was the food like 5-star? No, but some have shared with me as to what their experience was, and what's being reported is not entirely accurate. Mind you, Plain Man Safely is not going to be a headline in our country, and if it was, nobody's going to pick up that paper.
Yeah.
So it's important that we bring it to light, but I also do think it's important that we put into perspective what the situation is. It's kind of like the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. Yes, some people received it that should not have received it. Many of the individuals you're working on behalf of and with needed that benefit and should not have been overly regulated because a few people do not know how to follow the rules and have taken advantage of the system.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And so I think on the opposite side of that, it's horrible that there are people, and we're definitely documenting it, and that the reporting has not been getting worse. The reporting's been getting better as to the conditions in these places, and so it's not been really hitting front page news or headlines.
Mm-hmm.
I would say over the last I don't know how many months, because measures have been put into place.
Okay. What measures particularly have been put into place?
I don't know personally, Rebecca, because I don't sit there working on that file 24/7, because there are people who should be doing that work. I should not have to babysit individuals to say you don't rape a fellow citizen or an individual.
Oh yeah, for sure.
People should know that's wrong, and if there are people doing it, that's why we have laws in place, and that's why we have a judicial system to hold them into account, and that's why our government has been adamant about supporting unequivocally the person who reports. No more judging them and saying it wasn't true. Let the system unfold. Let the system determine what took place. But if somebody comes out, you back that person and let them have their platform. We've been unequivocal about that.
100%. I think that's important. So
is there anything else you'd like me to note?
I'm still just wondering if the government who's away at the G7 summit will be receiving the same equal treatment as the people in the hotel quarantine facilities.
I'm not sure what that means.
Just the same access to security, the same access to food. I know there's outdoor time as well. Will they be receiving the same or if you know that they'll be receiving the same treatment?
The goal of these hotel facilities is always to get people in and out as quick as possible. Yeah. It's not to hold them there for a long time. Mm-hmm. If the measures are there to ensure that the test can come back quickly, people are out quickly. Yep. I've had constituents that have gone to the hotel and been offered discharge the very same day.
Yeah, I've heard of that too.
Okay, so I'm not sure what you mean by the same treatment. Do we want people that are in this delegation to be harassed and raped? No. We don't want that for anybody. We are not okay with that kind of treatment. Do we want people to be fed properly? Yes. Ideas of being fed properly vary amongst people. Mm-hmm. Some people would say 3 meals, 2 snacks a day is not enough food. Others would say that's too much food. Yeah. It matters your lifestyle. I'm not sure what to say. So will they receive food to make sure they're nourished? Yes.
That's good.
Will we hope that they get poor treatment to be, I don't know. I hope nobody gets that kind of treatment, but
absolutely.
People have.
Yeah.
It's come to the forefront. We've taken it seriously. We've not been dismissive of it. Mm-hmm. But the focus has been the health and safety of all Canadians and making sure the virus doesn't spread.
Yeah.
But a year and a half later, here we still are. in a pandemic.
Yep.
I'm not sure if you're suggesting that everything has been horrible and there's not been efforts to actually try to stay focused on health and safety of Canadians. I'm not
definitely not.
Entirely the point you're making.
I'm definitely not saying like everything has been terrible. I'm just concerned for the few that where it has been, because like as someone in social work, like I don't want to minimize, like, even though like you say like the hotel quarantine facilities have been like a great experience for most, I don't want to minimize the voices for those who it hasn't been a good experience.
As a minority who lives it every single day, I'm very cognizant about minority rights, and I fight very hard for them.
And that's really good, and I respect that of you.
I appreciate your support in making sure that they're brought to the forefront.
Yeah.
Let's make sure we keep doing it outside of a pandemic.
Yep, I 100% agree.
Anything else you'd like me to know?
I think that's it.
Excellent. I really thank you for taking the time. I wish you the best in your final year of social work and look forward to seeing you in the community serving and making our community better.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing your work too.
Excellent. Thanks, Rebecca.
All right.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye.